their way. Today, our mission has evolved to supporting more than 2,000 small business owners who serve nearly 500,000 families and individuals. Real people with real goals and dreams on the path to financial independence. Where will your journey take you? Visit us at commonwealth.com. Commonwealth Financial Network. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
My Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take, but early detection allowed us to take control of the situation together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. We have an elementary school shooting to report on in Texas, and South Korea saying North Korea has fired at least 3 suspected ballistic missiles. A look at global news and markets coming up on DBA.
Now Bloomberg traffic and weather. We'll start things off in New Jersey. The New Jersey Turnpike southbound truck lanes coming in just before exit 14. It's an accident involving a truck, left lane shoulder knocked out. You've got some pretty heavy delays as a result building through this area, also over in the car lanes and also on the northbound side, as folks want to see what's going on. Outbound Holland's in a half hour, 15 in from 1 and 9. Staying at the Lincoln, 30 out, 15 in. Once you're at the George Washington Bridge, the ride on the span is better than it was. Trying to get up to the bridge, still very difficult. The west side, very heavy, mid-60s, essentially all the way on up. Two-way delays on the east side to the 70s to the Harlem River Drive and northbound. It's at least 45 minutes to get up the Harlem River Drive and up to the bridge. In sports, Yankees host Baltimore, Mets are in San Francisco. Game 4, the Rangers host Carolina, trailing in that series 2-1. The Bloomberg 11:30 3-day weather. Tonight, cloudy skies, lows near 55. Wednesday, partly sunny, high near 70. Thursday, cloudy, high again near 70. And Friday, scattered showers and thunderstorms, highs of 75 to 80. Right now in Central Park, skies are cloudy. We're at 64 degrees. Now with lows, get their exclusive Harbor Breeze Hathaway 52-inch ceiling fan special value of $99.98. Selection varies by location while supplies last. Valid 5/19 to 5/25 with the best ride in and out of the city. This is Bloomberg 11:30.
Market, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We had a mixed finish for the U.S. equity market after the major indices finished well off the worst levels of the day. In fact, the Dow became a positive, and in the NASDAQ market, the composite index was down nearly 2.4%, but at the session low, the NASDAQ comp was down 3.8%. So there's a lot of concern about slower growth. There's also the nervousness inspired by Snap cutting its revenue and profit forecast. Shares in Snap today were down 43%, and this in turn weakened many firms that rely on digital advertising, or at least weakened those shares. As an example, Meta Platforms, the parent of Facebook, today was down more than 7.5%. Now, this worry over slower growth is translating into reduced expectations for the pace of Fed tightening. If you look at the short end of the U.S. yield curve today, the yield on the 2-year was down by more than 13 basis points. That's a very big move. 248 as we get set for trading in Tokyo. 10-year Treasury at 275. We also had some weak economic data, particularly when it comes to new home sales. A drop in the month of April by the most in nearly 9 years. A decline in the vicinity of 17%. So not surprisingly, you're going to have a weakness in a lot of home builder stocks, and certainly that was the case today. As we get set for trading in Asia, keep your eye on the market in South Korea. The government there saying North Korea fired at least 3 suspected ballistic missiles. We have a rate decision from the Reserve Bank of Australia. We're expecting to see a half-point increase, which would take the official cash rate to around 2%. And South Korean manufacturing confidence slipping a point in the latest survey to a reading of 87. We'll take another look at market action for you in 15 minutes. Let's get those global news headlines. Ed Baxter is in the Bloomberg newsroom in San Francisco. Ed.
Yeah, Douglas, 14 students and a teacher have been shot and killed at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. 18-year-old shooter killed by responding law enforcement at the scene. 2 police officers were wounded, although not seriously. In New York City, police have apprehended the suspected subway shooter from Sunday in which a Goldman Sachs employee was killed. New York Police Commissioner Keishan Sewell says this case is a poster child for the revolving door of justice and repeat offenses in the state. Japan's Coast Guard reporting North Korea has fired 3, apparently now is the latest report, ballistic missiles into the sea. China's virus czar is turning her attention from Beijing, from Shanghai, as cases there in Shanghai have subsided. And a video is circulated in China of what's being called the Big White Hazmat Pandemic enforcers entering an apartment in the city of Suzhou and dousing it with disinfectant, even opening up the refrigeration for sterilizations. And U.S. primary elections today focused primarily on Georgia may well shed some light on the future of the Republican Party going forward. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg. Right, Brian?
Yeah, thanks very much. Looking at some of the stories being covered by the outside press, obviously a lot on this shooting at an elementary school in Texas, and also on the firing of those 3 suspected ballistic missiles. And for the first time this month, actually North Korea fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles back on May 12th. And that was just a few hours after confirming its first COVID-19 case. A lot of coverage as well on these spooky comments from George Soros. The billionaire is warning that civilization may not survive Vladimir Putin's war. He says that the invasion of Ukraine has rattled Europe and could be the start of another world war. He says other issues that concern all of humanity, fighting pandemics and climate change, avoiding nuclear war, maintaining global institutions, they've had to take a back seat to that struggle. And that's why, again, he says our civilization may not survive. A couple of other quick stories here. Financial Times reporting that the world's leading shippers all stopped their deliveries to and from Russia after the invasion of Ukraine, with one crucial exception. That, according to London-based data analytics company Global Data, is the industry's 4th biggest shipper, China Costco Shipping Corporation. The Shanghai headquartered group continued transport of Russian crude oil to China, and that provided economic succor, according to one analyst, for Russia as it faces a barrage of sanctions. That's a quick look at the media. Rashad, over to you.
All right, let's have a look at what the markets are telling us and have a look at the news of the day. And joining us is Vincent Signorella, Bloomberg macro strategist. Vince, thank you so much for joining us. It does appear that we look at the market and we can see that interest rate swaps are now repricing how many interest rate hikes we're going to have. The odds of another half-point hike, I suppose, in the next 2 policy meetings have dropped to 68%, but they were 82% on Monday.
Yeah, and I think the market's actually finally coming to their senses, to be honest. I mean, Powell had mentioned about a week or so ago that the Fed, was very nimble and data dependent. If things got worse, meaning inflation would pick up, there's more they could do. And if things slowed down, they certainly could slow down. And we saw today in the data that Doug had mentioned about housing starts dropping significantly. That's the kind of data that would give the Fed pause, because the average consumer in the United States looks at their wealth and the cost of their home. They're not that well tested in the equity market. So if the prices of their home or the pace of sales drop, that would suggest that they would feel a little less confident about the economy and perhaps not spend as much and lower earnings, which basically would give the Fed an opportunity to pause. So I think the Fed's still going to hike tomorrow, of course, but I don't think the pace that's priced into the market is sound.
Yeah, you've been pretty consistent on this theme. I remember weeks and weeks ago, I asked you what was the greater threat, inflation running to the upside and getting out of control, or recession, and you said recession. And, we've seen the bond market now starting to reflect, a more difficult environment, with yields dropping 37 basis points for the 10-year from the peak and 31 basis points for the 2-year. The question is, was it just a crowded trade and, this is just some fine-tuning, or is there more to it? Is the bond market in the process of discounting a recession?
I think it's a little of both, to be honest. The bond market is thinking that, again, like as you mentioned, the repricing of things, perhaps the Fed's not going to be that aggressive. If the Fed's not that aggressive, that may boost risk prices and maybe push a recession out or cancel it altogether. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to wages, and we won't see the real number that I want to look at, which is the employment cost index. It's quarterly, so it doesn't come out until the end of June. But if you keep an eye on average hourly earnings on a weekly basis, that come out with CPI data, and that'll come out, I think, on the 10th of June. That will give us an indication where wages are going. And if wages aren't keeping up with inflation, you realistically can't expect the consumer to spend at the levels they've been spending in the past.
But that makes interest rate hikes redundant, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with interest rate hikes, at least in my opinion, is, the Fed really, I think, should be concentrating more on reducing the balance sheet and not trying to dictate where interest rates should be. The market will tell them where interest rates are going to be, and they could simply follow suit, raise, lower, whatever the case may be. But if you're keeping a high balance sheet, you're keeping a great supply of money, it's counterintuitive, right? You're raising the price of money, but you're not reducing the supply of money. So you're still pretty liquid, and you're still being really accommodative, but you're just making it more expensive.
Vincent, I mean, we've got $3 trillion coming off the balance sheet in the next 3 years.
Yeah, in the next 3 years, but not in the next 3 months where they're looking for 150 basis points of rate hike. That's just the point. I agree with you, yes, but I think they need to be more aggressive in reducing the balance sheet, and they should have been more aggressive as the economy was really, hot in the last 6 months. And to me, raising interest rates, like I said, is more. It's more changing the price of money than really tightening, if you will, when you have all that money still sloshing around in the economy.
Vince, you made reference to the housing market. There's a couple of ways of looking at it, just that it hasn't broken yet, and that it will, and that's quite dire, I suppose. But as you say, wages are pretty solid. People have money. They may not have enough money to buy a house, but they have enough money to pay high rent, and that, in the end, is likely to support the selling prices. I'm curious whether or not you think that we will actually see finally housing take a big dip, and whether that augurs badly for the economy down the road.
Well, one of the problems with the data, to be honest, and when you see these sales declines, is there's a really short inventory list out there. So it's not just that mortgage rates are higher, and it's not just that housing prices are higher. There's not a lot of inventory in the market. So by design, we're going to see lower sales. The question is, will prices follow? And then if prices follow, that's the thing that you would probably worry about. But at the moment, especially in the Northeast and where I live, the housing market is still really hot, and people are paying over asking price because there's just not a lot to choose from.
Yeah, that's very much the case in California. We have seen the 20 offers stop, and now you're getting more sort of like a handful of offers, 2, 3, 4 offers. But still strong, and so it'll be an interesting one to watch here in the coming weeks. Actually, mortgage rates have come down here in the last 10 days as yields have dropped. All right, top stories coming up next. Many thanks to Vince Signorella. This is Bloomberg. Now, Bloomberg traffic and weather. Still some pretty heavy traffic headed up the Connecticut Turnpike right now. 20 extra minutes from exit 3 in Greenwich up towards exit 21 at Round Hill Road. Over on the Merritt northbound, an extra 5 or 6 minutes from exit 41 in towards exit 46. Back we go into the 5 boroughs. We're going to Manhattan. Looks like the ride on the west side still very troublesome from the mid-50s all the way on up to the bridge. Two-way delays still on the east side from the mid-40s up to the RFK, and traffic barely moving coming up both the Harlem River Drive and the Major Deacon. Outbound Holland Tunnel 30 minutes, 15 in now from 1 and 9, 30 out 15 minutes, and at the Lincoln Tunnel, slow but bearable getting over the George Washington Bridge. Still an accident on the southbound New Jersey Turnpike. The truck lanes just before exit 14 near Newark Airport. Left lane knocked out and delayed still in both directions. Sports, the Yankees host Baltimore. The Mets, they are in San Francisco later tonight. Game 4 at the Garden. The Rangers host Carolina, trailing in the series 2-1. The Bloomberg 11:30 3-day weather forecast. Tonight, cloudy skies, lows near 55.
Wednesday, partly sunny, high near 70. Thursday, cloudy, high around 70. Then Friday, scattered showers and thunderstorms, high 70.